See how Our Lady Angrboða frowns, sister. Why could that be, I wonder?
Could it be, brother, because Loki Laufeyson will be king?
Or could it be because she was sent from the court to fetch the children of Rimnir, like a common thrall?
Perhaps it is because the Lady Skadi is already closest to becoming the first wife.
Heiðr replies, a mischievous smile on her lips.
Ah, perhaps. Or perhaps I am to blame, sister. Surely my ghastly powers make the lady uncomfortable.
Hrossþjófr wiggles his fingers playfully, and a luminescent green glows from his fingertips. Well, that's certainly something to ask about later. You glance at the forest twins for guidance. The walk back to the throne room is proving hellishly awkward so far, and you're pretty sure the huge giantess leading the way would have already throttled the storm twins were they not some sort of special guests. Gjalep and Griep both look pretty uncomfortable too, though you think you see a look of surprise flicker in Griep's eyes when Hrossþjófr shows off his magic. She quickly looks away, tucking a wayward strand of hair behind her braid. Interesting. Heiðr grins at her brother.
It may be that Lady Angrboða simply finds herself ill at ease in the presence of the stormer Jotnar.
Honored speaker for the Valva, perhaps you should hold your tongue. The woman called Angrboða practically snarls. Hrossþjófr turns and winks over his shoulder, and you could swear you could see Griep's cheeks turn the faintest shade of lavender. So frost giants can blush after all. You think, weirdly smug about the observation. Maybe this is the kind of stuff that Loki was talking about you overhearing, all this weird tension between the tribes. If he likes the gossip that you bring in, will he reward you? Probably not. Well, maybe he'll be a little more pleasant, at least. You decide to pretend that you're a spy, working deep undercover. Maybe that will help you get through all of this ridiculous pet nonsense. It does seem that the giants are willing to say almost anything at all in front of you. Probably because they think you're too stupid and scared to do anything with what you overhear. The dull roar of the crowd in the throne room is audible even before you reach it, and some instinct is really, really urging you to just turn tail and run. You don't have the best sense of direction, but hey, maybe you could find your way back to Loki's room, except you'd probably get all of 2 steps before a giant snatched you up. You might kind of like your twin guards, but that doesn't change the fact that they're still essentially guards. Plus, Angrboða looks like she'd be pretty happy to snap you like a twig. A hand rests on your shoulder as you follow the storm twins and Angrboða into the massive hall, and you look up to find Gjalep smiling at you.
I have never seen a new king made in Anga, but I expect that this part will not take long. Once the announcement is made, there will be an uproar, and the royal family will likely want to retire from court for some peace.
This is the best news you've heard all day. Well, except for the not becoming a sacrifice thing, and the Loki is actually legit, so probably don't kill him for claiming the throne thing. Although the uproar part sounds a bit sketchy, today is just a roller coaster of emotions, you decide. It seems like things are probably going to stay that way for the foreseeable future. Loki honestly looks a little bit like a maniac when you risk a glance up towards his throne as you're making your way to your nest. There's a thin smile on his lips and a gleam in his eyes, and he looks massively entertained, despite the fact that the general vibe of the room suggests that there's been some fighting. Maybe that's why he looks so massively entertained.
Go to your place, little one,
Griep whispers, and you're more than a little concerned by how tense she seems. Still, it clearly isn't the time or the place to start an argument, and you tuck your head down and shuffle towards your little spot as quickly and inconspicuously as humanly possible, avoiding most of the crowd of giants like the plague. Unfortunately, as you reach your place, you notice that quite a few of the giants are actively staring at you now, and you wonder what exactly it was that the court had been discussing. And you can't help but wonder, too, if maybe the whole sacrifice the mortal topic was revisited in your absence. You dig your teeth into your lip, biting down so hard that it nearly bleeds. What will you do if they try to kill you? Would any of the twins help you run? Would Bylester? No, of course they wouldn't. They've got to be vulnerable to something. Would it be in one of those books in the archive, maybe? Something that will weaken them, or something. Yeah, maybe there is. In one of those books you can't read. Your inner voice chimes in. Heiðr's clear voice rings out, breaking your mind free from its panicked ramblings, and you curl your hands into fists, wishing you weren't quite so small, quite so soft, and quite so alone. The Valva speaks, and Loki Laufeyson will be king, she loudly declares, and you're a little surprised by the blunt simplicity of the announcement. There is absolute silence. You can hear your heart beating. Her brother stands beside her.
The Stormer Jotnar claim Loki Laufeyson as the rightful king of Jotunheim.
The giants in the crowd are all looking at each other, as if they're all expecting someone else to start screaming about how all of this is insane and they're not going to stand for it. But no one does. After an uncomfortable pause, a few whispers breaking through the throng, Queen Farbauti rests a hand on her son's shoulder, her face perfectly blank. You can barely make out just how tightly her fingers are digging into his skin, but Bylester doesn't flinch.
The Skogar Jotnar claim Loki Laufeyson as the rightful king of Jotunheim.
There's that uproar you've been warned about. Apparently, the court was not expecting the queen to throw her clan's weight behind Loki, and while there are, shockingly enough, quite a few giants that look more entertained than displeased, a lot of the Jotnar proper look pissed. Since they're some of the tallest and strongest looking, you find that concerning. Loki doesn't look surprised.
Tonight, we feast to welcome the honored Volva, and tomorrow...
Farbauti glances towards Loki for only a moment, expression indecipherable.
Tomorrow we crown Loki Laufeyson as king.
She then stands abruptly, Loki and Bylester joining her, and save for the old Valva and the Storm Twins, everyone else falls to their knees. It's honestly a pretty spectacular sight, and you feel a bit awestruck, easily imagining some grand orchestral number sweeping to life in the background. The moment doesn't last long, because as the royal family begins to make their way down the steps of the dais, you suddenly become terribly worried that you're about to be left behind, and being left behind in a room full of giants who are clearly very on edge is probably about the same thing as a death sentence. But when Loki reaches the foot of the dais, he pauses for a moment, almost as an afterthought, and turns to you, crooking his finger. Your cheeks heat. Is he trying to draw as much attention to you as possible? You thought you were supposed to be keeping a low profile. He's crazy, you remind yourself. Chaos personified. And so, even though you're shaking so hard that your teeth are chattering, and this time it's not from the cold, you push yourself to your feet and scramble after him. You're almost relieved when he seizes your arm and drags you alongside him from the hall full of giants. Servants and guards are waiting outside of the throne room to escort everyone to their respective chambers, and you suppose that security is a little more high alert at the moment, considering all of the important guests and the political upheaval. The hallway that you're led down is near the one that you've been staying, but you're pretty sure it's on a different level. Honestly, with all of the small staircases and unusually sloping floors, you're having a hard time telling how many levels this palace even has. When you finally come to a halt, it's in front of a pair of massive wooden doors, carved to rival those of the archives. The only difference, as far as you can tell, is that these appear to be inlaid with gold. Damn, that's pretty impressive. The doors swing open with a wave of Loki's hand, and the servants look slightly unsettled. Oh, that's right. It doesn't seem like regular magic is much of a thing here. You think to yourself. Regular magic. What kind of ridiculous world have you fallen into that you feel the need to distinguish between regular magic and other types of magic? The room Loki yanks you into is much larger than the one you'd spent the night in, and you're still trying to take it all in when he sends the servants away. The solid sound of the door swinging shut grabbing your attention.
Behold, Jotunheim's royal chambers,
He says, sweeping his arms out grandly. He sounds way too flippant for your liking, considering that there might very well be a riot brewing outside. Did you just kick the queen of the planet out of her bedroom? You ask in disbelief, because honestly, you wouldn't really be that surprised at this point.
No, don't be stupid. Farbauti has her own chambers, of course. What sort of king shares his private chambers with a woman?
It's kind of interesting that that's a thing on this planet too. It seems really medieval. But at the same time, you aren't terribly surprised, because you aren't sure if marital romance is even a concept here. It seems like the circumstances surrounding Loki's parents' relationship are pretty much universally reviled. So, where am I going to sleep then? You peer about as you take off your cloak, looking for a door to a servant's chamber or something else predictably archaic and ridiculous. There's a large stone fireplace in the middle of the outer wall, surrounded by a few large plush cushions, and there are more windows made of the bubbly-looking glass, stretching from the floor to the ceiling. A dark wooden desk sits to one side, and on the other there is a large polished table that almost looks like it's made of some sort of cream-colored marble. There's an open doorway not far beyond the desk, and you see that you're pretty sure there's another fur-covered bed behind it. Pretty sparse furnishings, all in all for a king. You turn back to Loki, who is giving you a strange look.
You will sleep in my bed, of course.
But you just said...
You are a pet, not a wife. There is a difference.
Okay, freak, whatever you say. Loki flings himself down on one of the cushions, groaning, and you assume he must have irritated one of his injuries.
You did well, girl. The children of Hrimnir seem rather taken with you.
It's almost insulting how comfortable he seems around you, like he's rubbing it in your face that you can't do anything to him. Is that a good thing?
It is an interesting thing. Had the Volva and her kind seemed more keen on the idea of sacrificing you, it would have been terribly bothersome.
You feel cold. So that wasn't just a really bad joke?
No.
Loki props himself on his elbows and waves you forward.
Come here.
You eye him suspiciously, but you edge closer anyway, knowing that it's probably for the best if you keep him in a good mood. Why?
Because I am your master, now your king, and I wish it.
He replies with a snide smile, and once you're only a few feet away, he lunges forward and captures your wrist, yanking you forward. Sputtering in outrage, you fall across his lap, and Loki artfully splays you over his body, your back pressed against his chest.
I cannot imagine what you hope to accomplish by wiggling about like this, but I would advise against it.
He sighs contently, his arms wrapped around your waist, pinning you to him. A fire springs to light in the hearth, and you give up and fall back against him. Asshole. He tosses your nice little furry hat aside and nuzzles your hair. You suddenly realize, both horrified and fascinated, that you've become some sort of a comfort object. Loki's cool hands slide under the slits of your tunic dress, somehow managing to work their way past your layers to find your skin. You stiffen, but he doesn't go any further than that. He just leaves them there on your belly.
You are terribly warm.
Are you using me as some kind of human blanket?
Yes, I suppose that I am. I may have a Jotun's form, but I was not raised here. I am not acclimatized, I suppose. Asgard, well, the Shining Realm Eternal is a very sunny, warm place. I almost find myself craving it.
His amused little huff ruffles your hair. He sounds wistful, and maybe a little confused, and you can't help but feel pity. He'd probably be angry if he knew. You try to relax against him. It's super weird, but this whole situation is weird. So you might as well enjoy the peacefulness while you can. When his hands stir, you flinch slightly, but you don't try to push him away. He's simply stroking your skin lightly, absent-mindedly, and it honestly feels nice. You realize that you're really, really tired, and he probably is too. You spent days half dead in a cave, and he had been in rough shape even before that. And this could have been nice. It's a little uncomfortable to consider, but if only Loki was some normal human man instead of a crazy, magical space prince, well, make that space king now, you could have enjoyed this kind of closeness. Or, at least maybe your enjoyment wouldn't have come along with such a terribly guilty conscience. You've only just begun to truly sink into Loki's strangely comforting embrace when someone bangs on the door, causing you to jump. Feeling embarrassed at being caught, you try to scramble away, but his large hands on your belly keep you soundly in place.
Don't. Stay. It's better this way.
You aren't really sure what he means by better, but you go slack as the door swings open. It's probably a bad idea to have any giants seeing you trying to wrestle away from their new king, especially when he just magnanimously declined killing you. It's Bylester. You should have guessed. He's watching you both with a mixture of horror and fascination, as if he's seeing something he knows he shouldn't find interesting, but he still does. Heat floods your cheeks. You guess this does probably look pretty suggestive and scandalous, particularly since you're a human. The door swings closed, but not before the guards outside manage to sneak a peek. Wonderful. If Jotunheim had gossip magazines, you're pretty sure you just made the front cover.
I've come to congratulate you, brother.
Bylester finally says, stepping closer. Beneath you, you think you feel Loki tense slightly, but he doesn't budge.
Do you intend to challenge my claim, Bylester?
I will do what honor demands.
Loki's laugh is harsh, and the fact that it's right in your ear causes you to cringe.
Don't try speaking in riddles with me, boy. We may be kin, but only I am the god of lies.
Very well. Let me speak frankly then with the god of lies.
He sits on one of the cushions, leaning his forearms on his knees.
I do not care what happens to the throne, brother mine. I do not covet it as you do.
However,
my elder brother Helblindi does.
Loki's fingertips dig into the soft skin of your stomach ever so slightly. It's the only reaction he shows.
So then, what am I to expect, Bylester? You and your brother will attempt to overthrow your rightful king.
The younger giant steeples his fingers, and you marvel at just how casual they're being about what essentially amounts to treasons and assassinations. Creepy-ass Laufeyssons.
Mother has pledged you the fealty of our clan, and I will abide by this. But who can know what Helblindi will do? He has always been quite ruthless. Father favored him for it.
He stands, rolling to his feet with a grace that you'd never expect from someone so tall.
If Helblindi challenges you, Loki Laufeysson, then I will stand with my brother. My true brother.
How touching.
It is not a matter of sentiment. As I said, I will do as honor demands.
Let us hope, then, that our brother Helblindi can be made to see reason, lest blood be shed unnecessarily.
Loki's voice is cold and sharp, and you try to pretend that you're invisible. The young giant's gaze falls to rest on you for a moment or two then, and you try to resist the urge to burrow back against Loki.
Yes, let us hope,
he says, and that seems to be the end of it. Hesitating, Bylester turns back to the door, his expression a blank mask.
Brother, the lesser sons of Laufey might consider your presence as an opportunity to advance themselves. You should be wary.
Loki appears taken aback, though he recovers quickly enough.
I'm grateful for the warning.
The younger giant simply looks at the two of you for a moment, gives a slight shrug, then leaves. Now what does that mean? Who are the lesser sons of Laufey?
Laufey had other children, with his other women. Helblindi and Bylester are the sons of Laufey's queen consort, so they are considered legitimate heirs to the throne, as I am. The rest are relatively far removed from the line of succession.
You stare at him over your shoulder, dumbfounded. You've been doing a lot of studying since we got here, huh?
Necessity is the greatest motivator.
So basically, you've got a bunch of half-siblings who probably think that murdering you is the best way to climb up the social ladder. Is that right?
To murder both of us. And that is correct.
Wonderful. Great. And why did he tell you that? Loki scoffs, pressing his nose into your hair once again.
Bylester might not covet the throne, but that does not mean he does not covet.
Your head is throbbing, and you squeeze your eyes closed and lean into the crook of his neck. Freaking space giants can't give a straight answer to anything. So, what does that mean? What does he want?
You? Is it not obvious? Rare things are meant to be envied, and you are Jotunheim's only mortal. If I am murdered by someone else, you will likely die alongside me.
What? You manage to whisper after a moment, completely horrified.
Calm yourself, girl. I am notoriously difficult to kill, if you recall.
Yeah, but I'm not. You're staring in the shiny, polished mirror in front of you, with Gjalep and Griep hovering expectantly at your side. Honestly, you aren't entirely sure what to think. They kind of made you look... well, you look gray, for lack of a better description. They've cooled your skin tone and darkened your eyelids, and now Gjalep is painting your lips an interesting shade of violet. You begin, but she shushes you and frowns as she brings a bright white crayon-looking thing to your forehead. Griep rolls her eyes.
The mortal does not need that. She has no markings to highlight. I know.
Gjalep replies, frowning in concentration as she traces down past your eyebrows.
I am going to invent some for her. And Illy's chin looks like this, yes?
She leans back and Griep peers over your shoulder.
Yes.
You're making me match the king?
Of course. You are his mortal, after all.
Uh-huh. Gjalep taps the white makeup stick to her chin as her eyes rake down your face, and you blush. But hey, at least maybe with all this weird gray powder on your face, your blush will finally be hidden.
We could sharpen her teeth.
What? You squeak. Her bright red eyes are amused.
You have reached... how to say it? You have reached sexual maturity for a Midgardian, have you not? Of course she has.
Griep plucks the white makeup stick from her sister's fingers and leans closer to the mirror, beginning to trace along the ridges of her own cheeks. You're kind of surprised. She doesn't particularly strike you as the type to get all dolled up for a feast.
The king keeps her to warm his bed, after all.
Heat bleeds across your face at the casual implication, but you're too distracted by Jalep's cool fingers on your jaw, pulling open your mouth to examine your teeth.
So we could. Do not be ridiculous, sister. An Anga is neither Jotun, nor is she able to court.
It's super surreal to see a giant pouting, but that's definitely what Gjalep is doing now.
Well, an Anga does not need to court. And if she presumes to bite the king, he might kill her.
What? Gjalep appears suddenly sobered.
Oh, that may be so, sister.
Okay, what? You finally managed to ask aloud. Your back is stiff, and your muscles are probably going to ache like crazy in the morning just from the tension. They both seem almost surprised at the reminder that you can speak.
I thought that I heard you speak of this with Hrossþjófr. Among the Skogar Jotnar, as well as some of the other clans, the sharpening of the eye-teeth signals.
I know that part. You blurt out, too horrifically embarrassed to remember that interrupting giants is probably a terrible idea, even if these twins seem relatively chill. I mean, why would something like that make him kill me?
A mortal pet attempting to mate-mark a king? And not just any king. Loki Lawfacin is wicked and temperamental. He would snuff you out like a candle. Even Skadi fears him. Sister, your tongue will get you in trouble. It is the truth.
Wait, if she's so afraid of him, then why is she all over him all the time? You say, deciding to push the whole mate mark thing into some dark recess of your mind to mull over later. The twins exchange a look, and you wonder if there's some conversation happening there that you aren't privy to.
Skadi is meant to marry the king in Anga. She had her sights set on Prince Helbindi, but now that he has been removed from kingship...
She needs Loki if she still wants to be a queen. Your chest is doing something weird, and you focus on your reflection in the mirror.
Yes. And the first wife is usually the most influential, so it would do her well to move quickly.
Like Loki's mom? An awkward pause follows your question, and you think that maybe you shouldn't have asked. After all, they are a part of Farbauti's clan, and Farbauti definitely had issues with Loki's mother. But she was the old King Laufey's first wife, so that has to be significant, doesn't it? Clearing her throat, Griep hands the white stick to her sister.
We are much younger than the king, of course. We were not alive when Gunlod was queen of Jotunheim.
Well, it doesn't look like that line of questioning is going to get you anywhere. Why does Skadi hate me? You ask instead. That is a fair question. She did just suggest that you be used as a human sacrifice. Your stomach twists and churns at the memory.
Lady Skadi is old enough to remember fondly the days of human thraldom. Most Jotnar were alive during those days in Anga. Odin Allfather decided that Midgard was to be the playground for the Aesir alone, and he stole our ancient treasure and cut us off from the rest of the Nine. It is truly the fault of the Aesir, not you little mortals. But the fact remains that many would like to see you suffer for it. And there's the fact, also, that Skadi is jealous that you share in Illy's bed. Sister!
Griep looks appalled, but Gjalep simply snickers. Okay, so maybe the makeup isn't heavy enough to hide your blush. I don't share his bed. At least not in the way you're suggesting, you want to say. But maybe it's for the best. At least everyone thinks that Loki doesn't want you dead. For now. The twins deposit you at the door of the king's new chambers when they're finished stalling you up, and you step into the main room, feeling incredibly uncomfortable. The looks that the guards sent your way as they opened the door to admit you hadn't been exactly friendly. Loki is seated at his dark wooden desk, a scroll held in front of his face. His hands, you notice, are pale. Must not be feeling very blue today. He also doesn't appear to have noticed your arrival, though you guess it's more likely that he simply doesn't care. You shuffle around, wondering what you're supposed to do. This pet thing didn't exactly come with an instruction manual. and then you sneeze, and the sound echoes in the nearly silent room. Loki glances over the top of the scroll, and you're startled to find his eyes are crimson. It's a weird in-between of the forms you're used to, and you wonder if maybe he's having a hard time keeping up with which body he's supposed to be in. Weird shapeshifter identity issues. His eyebrows elegantly arc in an expression of aristocratic bemusement, and the scroll lowers slightly.
What in the nine is all of this?
It's not a tone that suggests overwhelming approval, and a lump forms in your throat. The twins decided to, well, decorate me, I guess. Make me look more Jotun for the celebration tonight.
You look like a corpse.
He comments, his eyes flickering back down to the scroll.
Dreadful.
Well, damn. That stings a hell of a lot more than it has any right to. It wasn't like you picked out this look in the first place. And even if you had, why would you care what this asshole thinks? Blinking furiously, you try to suppress your tears. Don't cry. Don't cry. I think the idea was to make me look less human.
Yes, I can see that.
They even mentioned sharpening my teeth. That got his attention, and he carefully places the scroll on the desktop, leaning back in his seat with an expression you can't quite read. Honestly, those eyes make him look like a freaking vampire, and it is kind of a good look on him.
They did they?
His long fingers curl around the ends of his armrests, and you suddenly feel like maybe you shouldn't have said anything. Because now that you have his attention, you aren't entirely sure what to do with it.
And why, one must wonder, would they suggest such a thing?
You swallow, your nerves cranking up a notch or two. It's clear his convoluted mind is racing towards some conclusion, though you have no idea what it might be. I guess they think maybe you'll be nice to me if I look good. He laughs, and it isn't very friendly.
Or perhaps they wish to make you look more pleasing to some other Jotun male. Perhaps they think that someone might save you from me. Pitiful little thing that you are.
Well, you sound paranoid. I'm just Loki's mortal, remember? You flinch when he stands suddenly and stalks towards you. God, you really need to learn to keep your stupid mouth shut.
That's right. You are just Loki's mortal.
He says, tipping your head back with a finger under your chin, and you realize that his eyes are scanning the marks Gjalep has traced over your face. Breathing is forgotten somehow, maybe even hypnotized. It certainly wouldn't be the first time. He angles your head to the side, frowning slightly, and your heart stutters as he leans in close to examine the lines running around your eyes.
Interesting. Little Gjalep did this, did she? It is a surprisingly accurate recreation.
He says, at least interesting is better than dreadful. Loki's hand drops away.
Go get in the bed, girl. I have business to attend to before the festivities begin.
Can I stay in here? He pauses, halfway turned back to his desk.
Why?
The lump in your throat is still there, and you try to swallow it down. I just don't like being alone. Loki sighs, dramatic as always, and a fire roars to life in the stone hearth with a wave of his hand.
Very well. But do not dare to complain of your discomfort.
You curl up on one of the large cushions by the fire, a little bothered by how relieved you are. But really, even Loki is better than being completely alone with nothing but your own thoughts to keep you company.
What are you doing, girl?
He was bound to ask, you guess. It isn't like you're a master of stealth, and it would be pretty hard to miss you slipping up closer and closer to the desk. In fact, you're a little surprised he let you peer over his shoulder as long as he had. I'm just trying to figure out these characters. Those don't look like any runes I've ever seen. You say. No point in lying to him, after all. His handwriting is exceptionally neat and blocky, and the runes he's writing look kind of familiar, but they're more spindly, with too many lines and dots to match up with anything you've seen on Earth.
That is because this is a script used in the court of Jotunheim. The runes you are familiar with correspond more closely to the true speak of the Asgardian peasantry.
You watch him for a few more minutes. He's a fast writer, and you wonder what it is that he's so eager to finish before the feast.
Do you need something?
Loki doesn't look up from his work as he says it, but the politeness in his voice is blatantly forced. Can you show me how to write my name? He pauses, sitting back in his chair and turning to look at you, tapping his pen against his lips. Apparently, something about that is funny, because he looks at you like he's about to laugh. You don't remember my name, do you?
No. I confess, if and when I do give any thought to you, you are simply mortal. Or pet.
What a bastard. But even though you're careful not to actually say it aloud, he grins, like he knows.
What a fearsome temper you have, and for such a little thing.
Glaring, you turn to stalk back to the fire, but a hand on your arm stops you. It's where the bruise is, hidden beneath your sleeves, and you flinch.
Go on then, mortal. Tell me your name.
And so you do, even though you're pretty sure he's just going to use it to tease you.
Here.
He says, keeping hold of your arm with one hand, he takes the pen and scrolls something down on the bottom of the page.
Your name, pet.
He taps the pen on each rune, sounding it out for you, and you feel a faint heat rising into your cheeks. Can I keep it?
I hardly have any use for it now, do I?
Letting go of your arm, he tears off the scrap of paper, dangling it in front of your face.
Now, how badly do you want your name, mortal?
Is that supposed to be some kind of innuendo? You bite your lip, blush deepening.
I need something from you.
Loki continues, a smirk on his face.
Since Geirrid's daughters seem so terribly taken with you, I want you to find out everything you can about these many siblings of mine.
Oh, not innuendo then. That shouldn't be disappointing you, right? Can't you just order someone to come tell you everything you want to know? I mean, you are the king now.
Precisely. I am the king, and I do not want to make it seem as if I'm concerned about such things. It will be taken as a sign of weakness.
But are you concerned?
Not unduly. As I said, it is nigh impossible to kill me. Now, what say you, pet?
Okay. You mumble, snatching the paper from his hand. At least it's something to do, I guess. And you had already been planning to report everything to him anyway, because for better or for worse, it looks like you and Loki are a team. What a terrifying thought.
Anything else you'd care to mention?
Well, there was this one giant lady who seemed super pissed. And
Angrboða, I assume. Unsurprising.
Loki snorts, sinking back into his cushion.
Why is that surprising? I mean, other than the fact that basically everyone here hates you? You catch yourself too late, but fortunately, he looks more entertained than offended.
This is why mortals are so widely regarded as one of the most foolhardy races in the Nine. I allow you some small measure of independence, and you are so emboldened that you dare speak to your master this way.
He says, extending a hand. Oh, great. There's the M word again. I'm just trying to be realistic. You reply, holding up your hands in a gesture of innocence. You can never be entirely certain if his smiles are masking that ruthlessness that seems to always be bubbling away inside of him. So you figure it's best you try to soothe him, just in case. If we're in this together, then, I should know what to look out for. He gives you a pointed look, hand still extended, and you take it with a sigh. Not entirely certain if it's good or bad that you aren't surprised at all when he pulls you into his lap. At least it isn't sexual, right? That's probably something to be thankful for. Other than the teasing that's clearly meant to unsettle you, Loki seemed to make it pretty clear that he isn't interested. What was it he said in the bath? Oh, right. It was, I'm not tempted by you. Rude. Although, at least it would be less bizarre than being some sort of therapy pet or something. Or maybe it wouldn't be, because the non-romantic nearness is already confusing enough, and you can't imagine what it would be like if he actually tried something. And there's the tricky fact that, when you don't consider all of the complications, the fact that he's crazy, that he tried to take over Earth, that he's basically holding you prisoner in the freaky ice palace that's now technically his, to name a few, you might actually be attracted to him. Loki gives your cheek a light pinch.
Are you even listening to me, girl?
I was distracted.
Of course you were.
You're trying to ignore the way his thumb idly strokes your cheek as he says it. It probably isn't intentional anyway.
I said that Angrboða is likely appalled that she'll have to wed a runt if she wants to solidify her position in court. I am hardly the ideal Jotun male.
I strongly disagree, your mind whispers. Oh no, that's not what you should be thinking right now. And especially not while you're in his lap. I thought Scotty was supposed to be marrying you. Internally, you cringe. You felt like an idiot for blurting it out like that. Like you care. You don't care.
Oh, did you somehow miss the fact that a Jotun king is expected to take many wives?
I didn't miss it, you mutter, pulling one of the fur blankets up to your chin. You hoped that you could manage to melt him. I just didn't expect you to suddenly start following tradition.
No one's helped me. You are a mouthy little wench. Were you not so terribly irritating, I might almost find it endearing.
Yeah, thanks.
Don't pout, mortal. Your condition could be much worse, you know. You could have frozen in that cave, or been devoured by wolves.
I get the idea. Sighing, you wiggle slightly to get comfortable, and Loki suddenly clears his throat. And I'm grateful. You bite out. Is that what you're waiting for? I'm glad you saved me from dying in the snow. Thank you. I do hope you keep it up. Loki is silent for a moment, and you watch the fire crackle, wishing you were in some nice little log cabin, tucked away somewhere pretty and picturesque on Earth. Hell, you wouldn't even mind having to share it with him at this point. Your standards have dropped kind of significantly.
I have to slay some legendary creature, a Vagu, a tremendous wolf by the name of Managam. That is my sacrifice, in your stead.
He says suddenly. He sounds surprisingly serious, and you twist to look up at him, though his expression doesn't give much away. I didn't realize it was that close of a thing.
Mortal blood.
He says simply, as if that explains everything. How's the wolf-slaying thing gonna go down?
We will travel to Jarnvidir, the Iron Wood, on the outskirts of Skadi's domain, in fact. I think she was pleased to be so included.
Loki smiles, glancing down at you. We?
Would you prefer to be left behind, mortal? All of your new little friends will be traveling with me, save for Bylester. I am certain he would be happy enough to stay behind.
Okay, I'm going on the trip. I get it. I just hope you know what you're doing.
And I hope that you know that I'm only allowing you to be so free with me right now because of how cross and frightened you surely will be at the banquet tonight.
Cross and frightened?
Yes. The feast last night was relatively tame. I expect this one to be a bit more raucous. As you're my little treasure, I'm certain that you will be a topic of much conversation.
He continues, shooting you a warning look as you open your mouth.
And no, you will not be absent from the feast. You will sit at my feet and do as you're told.
You clench your teeth, squeezing your eyes closed as you fall back against his shoulder.
Understood, Inunga?
Yes, Inili. I understand. You snap, knowing full well that if you did open your eyes, he'd likely be grinning. A really stocky giant sitting at one of the lower tables with Angrboða keeps making awkward eye contact. You aren't really sure what to do about it. Close your eyes, maybe? But then you would just look like an idiot. Plus, since Loki's just handing down bites of food whenever he damn well pleases, you don't want to accidentally end up with soup spilled on your head, or something else predictably humiliating. No, probably best to just ignore the 10-foot-tall, beady-eyed slab of blue granite who keeps looking right at you. Since Loki's sharing the head of the high table with the queen now, your nest is awkwardly off to the side of him. You aren't really as sheltered as you like. At least you have your hat again, and that kind of hides your face. The hat is a definite plus. You're definitely keeping it as a souvenir. You deserve a souvenir.
Here, only a sip.
Loki says suddenly, thrusting a mug in your face. The mug is fancy. You guess it must be his, which means it probably isn't poisoned. Or does that mean it's more likely to be poisoned than any other mug in the room? Probably the second one. Smiling slightly, you realize that you're the exact opposite of a traditional royal food taster. The king is checking the food to make sure it's safe for you. The thought flusters you slightly, though you reassure yourself that it's likely just because of the fact that he spent the entire afternoon holding you in front of a fire, in his palace. Loki didn't bother to look down or explain what the drink is, but it's dark and reddish, and it smells incredibly sharp and spicy. Okay, here goes nothing. Whatever it is, it's warm. You feel heat curl through you almost instantly, and it's a happy, pleasant sort of warmth. In fact, it makes you realize how cold you've been during this entire adventure, even when you're snuggled up with Jotunheim's most eligible bachelor. So, deciding that it's a sensation worth chasing, you take another sip. And another. His hand rests on your head, and you blink slowly as he glances down at you.
Better?
He begins to ask, but then he sees that the mug is now half empty, and he pauses for a moment. Oops.
Oh dear. Such a terrible lack of restraint. I do hope that doesn't kill you.
He says, deftly plucking it from your hands. He's such a drama queen. You scoff, languidly tilting your head back so you can see him better. I'm warm.
You are besotted.
As soon as he turns back to the table, his hand still resting on your head, you risk a tiny eye roll. Stupid Loki. You don't actually drink, but you're pretty sure that isn't how it works. It's only been like 5 minutes, right? That one troll of a giant sitting with Angrboða makes eye contact again, and you're starting to feel a little pissed about it. "Hey," you whisper, tugging on Loki's pant leg. Not very easy, by the way, since they're kinda tight. "That guy over there's creeping me out." You see his jaw clench. Oops again. That's probably a violation of the only speak when spoken to thing. But it is a nice view of his jaw from down here. He keeps up whatever conversation he's got going on up there for a while, and in the meantime, you continue to tug on the material of his pants, trying to figure out exactly what it is. It's gotta be some sort of leather, surely, but it's super soft and sleek. His hand leaves your head after a moment or two, and he leans down slightly, frowning, his fingers curling around yours.
What?
"That giant, the one with the angry lady. He's staring, and I don't like it."
Nons. Everyone is staring, mortal. I'm the king, and you're the only human in the realm.
Loki hisses. He sends a searching look towards the table holding Angrboda's group, and then lets out a restrained sigh.
All right then.
And with that, he grabs you by the back of your tunic and hauls you into his lap. There's a slight lull in the conversation in the hall, but you barely notice. His kingly chair is pretty roomy since he isn't insanely massive, and you curl up pretty easily. "Haha, suck it, angry face. Can't get me now," you think, feeling slightly smug. He's chilly, but since you're all warm and fuzzy, the contrast almost feels nice. Refreshing, kind of. Like a breeze on a sunny beach. Loki would die if he heard that. It's enough to make you giggle, and you eventually doze off with a small smile on your lips.
Bring her.
You hear, and while you don't bother opening your eyes, the dark fuzzy warmness is just too nice. Honestly, you're pretty sure that Loki would try to wake you if you were dying. You feel your body being jostled, the background noise soon fading away. A girl's voice comes next, slightly amused.
"She is very light, sire."
Small and foolish. A dangerous pairing. She is to have no more spirits.
"Yes, my king."
There's silence for a while, then a light scraping sound.
Put her on the bed. I'll deal with this.
You aren't moving anymore, and there's a nice softness cushioning you. A contented sigh slips out. Perfect.
"Is there anything else I might do for you before you retire, your majesty?"
It has not gone unnoticed, Gerodidottir, that you choose to address me as the king before my coronation.
"Of course, sire. If you are to be the king of Jotunheim, then the king of Jotunheim you shall be."
Poetic. You and your sister will keep an eye on my pet when we journey to Yarnvadir. Do you accept the task?
"I do."
Good. You may go.
There's something soft around you, and something hard beneath you. Groaning, you turn your head away in a desperate attempt to avoid the light that's managing to seep through your eyelids. The smooth surface pressed against your face stirs, and you force your eyes to open as your head practically screams in protest. It's Loki's bare chest. You groan again. His arms wrap around from behind you, his hand covering your eyes.
Wishing you'd listen to me now, aren't you, mortal? Pathetic.
Loki sits up and your head falls against the furs beneath you. You yelp. Even that hurts.
I did not even get to bathe last night since you drank yourself into a stupor. I suppose it might have been a good opportunity to drown you.
Being drowned right now sounds pretty good, actually. Pressing your fingers into your eyes, you roll onto your stomach, trying to burrow away from the daylight. Go ahead. Kill me.
Don't tempt me, girl. You can stay in the bed for now, but when I leave my chambers, you're coming with me.
Twisting slightly, you peek up at him through your fingers. Magic?
Absolutely not. I have no inclination to waste any more magic on you. And I did warn you. Here.
He plucks a crystal clear cup from the table by his new massive bed, then drops something in it.
This should make you slightly more bearable.
Sitting up, you take it from his hand, frowning as the bitter taste creeps down your throat. You feel like you're going to vomit, and you can only imagine how that would go. Last night is spotty at best. Then, was I in your lap in front of everyone? Loki crouches beside the bed, grinning in earnest.
Why, yes, mortal, you were. I also thought it prudent to abandon my efforts to continue feeding you after you licked honey from my fingers.
He snickers as the blood drains from your face, clearly delighted.
Had you forgotten?
You liar.
Oh no. I'm afraid my memory of this evening is all too perfect. Ask your little guardians if you must.
His eyes sparkle. The pounding in your head seems to spike.
Ask my brother. I'm certain he noticed.
Oh, God.
Yes.
Stop smiling like that, please. What was in that? He stands, mercifully, and crosses over to the massive trunk on the other side of the room, which he promptly begins rummaging through. You realize then, much to your embarrassment, that you're only in a few of the many layers that you started with last night. Wonderful. This just gets better and better.
I believe it contains some sort of tree sap. And a distilled berry from the south, perhaps? I don't particularly recall. It's nothing I've ever had before.
You're about to go on a tirade about him giving you something when he doesn't even know what's in it, but he starts to strip off his pants, so you settle for awkwardly averting your eyes and silently burning in mortification.
At least it warmed you for a time, I suppose. You did mention that in bed last night. Repeatedly.
He's just screwing with me now, you assure yourself. No way I was babbling like an idiot in the middle of the night, while snuggling up to the God King bastard who's keeping me trapped here. Nope, didn't happen, and he can't prove me wrong.
Today will be taxing. I've tasked Erodia's daughters with keeping an eye on you.
He says. You risk a peek and find that he's fully dressed. And blue. Loki seems to spot the confusion on your face.
Your little forest twins, as you call them. Really, girl, you must become better with names if you're going to be any use to me.
They're tricky names.
I know. Drink that. And lie down. I'll fetch you when I need you.
He rests his fingertips on the rim of the glass for a moment, and you watch in fascination as it refills itself. You feel way too crappy to argue, and you're practically asleep by the time you bury your face back against the bed. In fact, you almost entirely miss the way Loki pulls more blankets over you before he leaves the room. You wake up before Loki comes for you, and your mouth feels like cotton. Your head kind of feels like cotton too, all fuzzy, dry, and scratchy. The crystal water glass on the table by the bed is full again, and you grab it and drain it. Big mistake. There's more of that bitter stuff in it, and it makes you gag. He's definitely just torturing me for not listening to him, you decide. But you do feel a little better than the first time you woke up, so you manage to choke down the rest of it. God, you'd kill for a hot chocolate right now. As you rub your aching eyes, you realize that there should be weird gray makeup smeared all over your hands, but there isn't. Maybe it just melded into your skin. That would be just your luck, wouldn't it? The room needs a mirror. You feel like you probably look pretty wild at the moment, and without even looking, you know your hair has seen better days. Whatever. It isn't like you were here to impress anyone. Except you wouldn't totally mind if you managed to impress Loki a little bit, if you're being completely honest with yourself. And what did he do with my clothes anyway? Your outer layers are nowhere to be seen, and even though leggings and an undertunic might be plenty on Earth, it certainly isn't ideal here. Though it's warmer in his room than you remember it being yesterday. Still a bit cool, of course, but not as frigid as the rest of the palace. Maybe you're just getting used to it. Apparently, being king means that you get rugs on the floor, which seems like a pretty fantastic perk, considering how cold and unforgiving the floors in this place tend to be. You pull one of the blankets off of the bed and wrap it around yourself, padding across the floor in your thick socks. The room sways, and you throw out your hands to steady yourself. Though it really doesn't do much for your balance, so you just end up feeling like an idiot. Taking a breath, you look around the room, waiting for your stomach to settle. There's honestly not much to look at, other than the trunk against the wall and the side table. There are a few shelves carved into the walls, mostly empty. Some tapestries of strange animals and not much else. Did the old king have more things and they just cleared them all out when he died? Or are the frost giants just this Spartan about their own personal rooms? After all, the library's pretty grand, and so is the rest of the palace. Once you get your balance under control, you head out into the main room, grimacing at the heaviness of the bedroom door as you shove it open. It looks like wood, but it feels like stone. Freaking Jotunheim. Nothing here is normal.
Feeling better, little girl?
Loki's back is to you as he sits at his desk, and since he doesn't turn, you stomp around in front of him. What happened to the rest of my clothes?
I removed them. You'll have new ones made before we leave for the Ironwood.
He doesn't look up from his book, and you're sorely tempted to try snatching it out of his hands. Maybe you can blame it on the tree sap hangover, or whatever it is you've got going on right now. Am I still gray? The corner of his lip turns up slightly.
No.
Frowning, you look at your fingers again, feeling a little suspicious. If it didn't all just smear off during the night, then he must have washed it off himself. Which is, well, you don't know what it is. But the mental image of this giant, arrogant, handsome villain washing your face carefully enough not to wake you makes your heart do funny little flips. Don't be stupid. I was so out of it last night, he probably could have slapped me and I wouldn't have noticed. Maybe he did. Maybe that's why he's smiling like that. You tell yourself, trying to force your blush away. No more makeup from now on, I'm guessing?
The lines are acceptable.
He says, and he puts the book back down, leaning on one arm as he regards you with bright red eyes.
And some of the court did seem to find it intriguing, so I believe little Yelp was rather proud of herself.
How much of the night had you entirely missed? Enough to not even know that you'd been discussed at the dinner table, apparently. What happened?
Quite a bit. My dear brother was rather distant last night. Knowing, as I do, the plight of jealous younger brothers, I can only assume that he was sulking because of the callous way I've been flaunting my mortal in his face. It isn't as if he can say anything. Farbauti would be appalled. I don't believe your charms have had any effect on her yet, pet.
My charms? You make it sound like I have some sort of plan.
Even you are clever enough to know that your best chance of a comfortable life here involves winning over as many of the Jotnar as possible, mortal. So, yes, I do think that it's planned.
You keep your mouth shut. It isn't like the thought hadn't crossed your mind, and it is one of the reasons you try to talk with the twins as much as you do, to make them realize you're an actual person.
Tell me this. If another frost giant, Bylester perhaps, or the as yet unseen Helblindi, were to come to you and offer to return you safely back to Midgard, if only you would help them to be rid of me, would you not take the chance?
You tense up. Is this a trick? Frickin' trickster god. No, I wouldn't. You say, almost surprising yourself.
Why?
You can't tell what he's thinking, and knowing him, it's probably a dangerous toss-up between amusement and anger. It's a good question, too. Why wouldn't you jump at any chance to make it back home? I kind of almost like you from time to time. I don't want you to actually die. You saved my life. I figure that deserves some loyalty.
Then you're a bigger fool than I thought, mortal.
Yeah, you're probably right. He's kept his distance for most of the morning, for which you're extremely thankful. Really, with all of these uncomfortable feelings you're having at the moment, the last thing you need is to have him start petting you again. Would you really not turn on him, even if it meant giving up a chance to go home? And why? Just because he's beautiful? No, it's more than that. It's because of the fact that he's keeping you alive, and you can't trust any of these other giants any more than you can trust him. Really, there's no reason to think that they'd keep up their end of any bargain. It's a reasonable excuse, but there's also the fact that you truly do feel some kind of loyalty to him, and it goes beyond whatever you might owe him for saving your life. If you didn't know any better, you might think that you're developing a crush. That's bad. Very, very bad. Stupid Stockholm Syndrome.
You really need to eat something.
Loki's voice is startling after a long period of silence, and you jump slightly.
Finish your porridge, and I'll give you a treat.
You frown down at the unappetizing-looking bowl of ground-up something in your hands. I'm not hungry.
Yes, you are. Your stomach will only pain you more if you go without food any longer. Do it.
Sighing in resignation, you shove a spoonful into your mouth, surprised that something that looks so bland actually turns out to be a little spicy. It's honestly not too bad. If only you had a camera, you could write a killer food and travel blog about this whole thing. When you scraped it clean, and you actually do feel a little better, though you'd never admit it to him, you get up and go to his desk, holding it in front of you like a prize. I'm finished.
Good girl. Where is the paper I gave you?
Flushing slightly, you reach down into the front of your tunic and fish out the folded up slip of paper out of your bra. Where else were you supposed to keep it safe? Loki smirking slightly as he plucks it from your fingers, and it only makes you feel more awkward. He starts scrawling something next to your name, and you lean over the desk, even though it's upside down and in runes you don't understand.
Come here.
He orders, and you move around to the side of his desk, peering over his shoulder. What's the rest of it say?
Inunga loka kona.
Your eyes narrow. I know what the first one means. What's the second? Grinning, he hands you back the paper.
Loki's woman.
What?
In case I ever misplace you, you would want to be returned safely to me, wouldn't you?
And though you glare at the paper in your hands, you're kind of fascinated by it. You have always had an interest in languages. Loka is possessive? He seems startled.
Yes.
Could you write the sounds underneath? With my alphabet?
Next time, perhaps.
Bribing you with knowledge. Truly evil. You decide to change subjects, trying to seem casual and not awkward as you carefully fold the little scrap and tuck it back into your shirt. So, when are we going to the woods with the monster wolf?
Tonight.
Your heart begins to hammer in your chest. You've kind of gotten used to being hidden away by the fireplace, you guess. Tonight?
Must you question everything I say? Yes, tonight. I suppose that was something else you missed while you were drunk out of your mind. The Volva insists that this sacrifice must be made as soon as possible. Otherwise, my kingship will be doomed. The whole ordeal promises to be entirely miserable.
Loki rolls his eyes. He touches your cheek suddenly.
You are trembling, mortal. Are you cold? I thought that the charm had...
No. You bluster, heat bleeding into your cheeks, which he's definitely going to notice. I'm just... the last time I was outside here, I almost died. And now we're going back out? I would rather not die yet. Loki's hand drops away.
I see. Well, I can assure you that it won't be comfortable by any means. I'll keep you alive. Never fear.
Then he stands, a mischievous look in his eyes.
The journey will be long and arduous. We should enjoy small comforts while we can.
With him standing so close to you, you have to tilt your head up to meet his gaze, which does absolutely nothing to help your blush. Meaning,
girl, that we're going to the baths. And I intend to enjoy it fully. For in a few days' time, I'll likely be battered and covered in wolf blood.
oh, well, have fun.
When I said we, I meant you and I, and you know it. Now, come along. It isn't far from the king's chambers, so I doubt you'll get your death of cold along the way.
Well, that's reassuring, he thinks sullenly. But you keep your mouth shut and follow him from the room.
Must we go through this every single time?
His expression is predictably dramatic, his brow raised, as if he's some sort of long-suffering martyr. Yes.
Fine. Go call for Scowdy then. Perhaps she and some of her women would be happy to tend to me.
He sighs. You sit at the edge of the pool, still entirely clothed and glowering, and he glides over to you in the water.
Go ahead, mortal. I'd thought you preferred to be alone, but...
Damn you, Loki. I'm keeping my underwear on this time.
No, you aren't.
He smiles up at you cheerily, and you take note of the fact that his eyes have stayed crimson this time, even while the rest of him is shifted back into human. Or Asgardian, technically. It's kind of weird to think about, all the shape-shifting stuff. If the eyes are the windows to the soul, Loki's soul must be pretty bloody. Yes, I am.
No. Is it not said on Midgard that cleanliness is next to godliness? Undress and join me, before I lose my temper.
There's a slight hint of a bite in that, though he's still smiling, and you feel your resolve crumble. Okay, but please don't look. The look he gives you says something along the lines of, "Why would I, idiot?" But he slides entirely under the water anyway, and while it's kind of freaky to think that he's just lurking down there in the dark of the pool, you guess it's all the privacy you're going to get. You carefully stash your piece of paper with the rest of your clothes far away from the water, then brace yourself as you shimmy out of your underwear, just knowing that he's going to pop up and start laughing at any moment. Your life has basically become the real-world equivalent of waiting for the jump scare in a horror movie. When you slide into the pool, it's no more graceful than the last time, and you can't hold back a yelp when Loki pops up directly in front of you.
You remember where to find the sponge, I assume?
Lips pressed in a thin line, you nod, floundering over to the shelf. Why does it have to be placed in the deeper end of the pool? But then you remember that you and Loki are very much on the shorter side of the frost giant height spectrum, so it probably isn't so inconvenient for the others. Maybe if I suck up enough, I can convince him to do some renovating. There's a little crystal bottle of something next to the sponge, and you snatch it down too. You give it a sniff and decide that it smells a little bit like cinnamon, but more flowery, maybe? Interesting. Maybe it's shampoo? He's doing the staring thing again. You can feel his gaze on the back of your head. It almost makes you afraid to turn around, but you force yourself. After all, you were just considering the perks of getting on the king's good side. Loki's staying near the edge of the pool, and you make your way towards him, holding up the little bottle. Is this a hair thing?
Yes, I believe so.
He replies, amused. Coming to a halt about a foot away from him, your chest just barely concealed under the water, you look up at him with a perplexed frown. I don't know how this is gonna work. You're tall, I can't reach. He scoffs as if you just said something ridiculous, but sinks down until the water is up to his shoulders. It's weird being taller than him for once, but it also brings his eye level closer to everything you're hoping is hidden by the darkness of the water, so you decide to get it over with as quickly as possible. The cinnamon-smelling stuff doesn't really lather up very well, but you assume it's supposed to be like that, reaching to work some through his hair. At least he has nice hair. But your heart nearly leaps from your chest when Loki suddenly surges up to his full height, taking hold of your wrist. He twists it carefully, examining your arm.
When did this happen?
He demands, and you realize that he's talking about the bruise that's now had time to fully form. Oh, it's from when we first got here. Remember? The queen was insulting your mom, and you... You didn't finish the thought, because Loki looks irritated. Probably shouldn't mention his mom, you belatedly remind yourself.
Why did you not tell me? This is deep.
I didn't think you'd care. You reply, trying to tug away. Loki says nothing, just studying you with a perfectly blank expression for an uncomfortable moment or two.
I suppose you're right. Continue.
He says, releasing you, and then he sinks back into the water. Okay, awkward. You quickly decide that moving behind him is much more conducive to reaching his long hair, and it has the added benefit of hiding you from those eyes that seem to see way more than they should. When you announce that you're finished, he ducks under the water and turns to you as he surfaces.
Yours as well. Unless you want me to do it for you.
His sly smile reminds you of the way he practically drowned you last time he washed your hair, so you're quick to do it yourself. Still, part of you couldn't help but wonder what it would be like to have his long fingers working against your scalp. In fact, despite not having much experience with this sort of thing, you can only imagine that those hands would feel nice everywhere, particularly if he took the time to be gentle. Christ, you've got to learn to chill. Squeezing your eyes and holding your nose, you plunge under the water, hoping that maybe it'll also rinse some of this stupid desire away too. But when you open your eyes, Loki's face is right there, and you're so close to the edge of the pool that there's really nowhere you can go.
What were you thinking, mortal? Just now. I am terribly curious.
He says, his voice smooth like silk. Damn it, caught red-handed. You wish you could just die on the spot. Midgard. I mean, Earth. I was thinking about someone on Earth.
Were you? Who might that be?
He breathes, and you can hear your heartbeat rushing in your ears. Those hands you'd been checking out so shamelessly are now suddenly on your waist, though he doesn't actually pull you any closer. A friend? His eyes narrow slightly as he smiles, and you think you know now what a rabbit feels like right before it's caught in the jaws of a fox.
You were not thinking of a friend, little liar. Does my thrall have a paramour left behind on Midgard?
Say yes, you tell yourself. That's the best thing to say, right? If you tell him that you were just daydreaming about some non-existent human boyfriend, then maybe you can hide the fact that you were really daydreaming about him. Yes? Loki looks slightly surprised for a moment, but then the predatory look returns, his fingers digging lightly into your skin.
More lies. You have no lover on Midgard, mortal. I can see the deceit in your eyes.
That's really not fair. Why does he have to be the god of lies? One of his thumbs is stroking the skin of your side now, so you just dig yourself deeper into the hole with another attempt to mislead him. But there's someone I do like, a guy I know, on Earth.
I see. Does this mortal man have a name?
For God's sakes, Loki. Just let it go, please. Naked interrogation really isn't fair, and neither is his freakish sense of smell that can apparently pick up on feelings. But Loki isn't really the type to just let things go, and your mind races to come up with something reasonably convincing. Chris? Chris, you say, cursing yourself for making it sound like a question.
What a dull name.
Well, I like it.
I'm sure you do.
One hand leaves your waist, coming up to rest on the ledge behind you. He's got you trapped, even more so than usual. Oh my god, what is he doing? Loki's gaze is hypnotizing, and you're entirely lost. Should you try slapping him again? He takes a deep, slow breath, and his lips part, an almost eager look gracing his features.
What are you thinking now, girl?
On the verge of choking from the tension, you almost let out a sob of relief when someone knocks on the door. I don't even care if it's Scotty. I don't care who it is, just as long as they distract him. He sees your relief too, and he smirks, not budging even a single damn inch as he calls for whoever is outside the door to enter. At least whoever it is can't see your face, which is surely flushed to a ridiculous degree.
Sire?
Damn it, it's Griep. You sink further into the water, wishing you could just die right then and there. At least Loki finally breaks eye contact.
Leave them on the floor and pack the rest. We will be going directly to the throne room from here.
You hear the door close again. It wasn't much of a reprieve. But Loki looks almost confused as he examines you now, his brow furrowed.
What are you playing at, mortal?
His hand doesn't leave your side. Me? What the hell are you doing? Your voice cracks, but you can't be bothered to care. You're too busy processing the fact that you basically just shrieked in his face, while naked, mind you. And if memory serves, Loki doesn't particularly care for shrieking. You... Stopping abruptly, Loki shakes his head, and his eyes bleed back into the interesting shade of blue-green. He takes a deep breath, then finally lets go of your waist. Now, if only he'd back up a step or two.
It's your scent. How are you doing this?
Your mouth falls open. How am I... The big, icy idiot doesn't know, you realize then. He hasn't figured it out. He knows that your scent is occasionally changing, and he might have some vague sensation of the feelings inspiring it, but he doesn't understand it. Loki's frown deepens.
Well, mortal?
Poor guy. It must be a new thing for him, like a sixth sense he never knew he had. Or seventh sense. He probably already has a sixth sense. Loki, I'm not doing anything.
Sire.
Sire, then. I'm not doing anything. I'm just existing. I don't know what you're talking about. It's some giant thing, I guess. His expression isn't changing, and you're getting more and more flustered. I'm just human! I can't magically alter my smell. You're the superpowered one here, okay? His head cocks slightly to one side, as if he's mulling it over.
I do not care for this. Spending so much time in this place. In my birth form.
He says after a moment. There's a little bit of a snarl in there, and it makes you jump. But it's not like you can back up any further.
It is altering me. And you, mortal, you...
But he stops himself abruptly once again, his lips pressed into a thin line. Without another word, he steps back and sinks under the water. You gape, staring at the ripples of the surface, afraid to budge even an inch. Oh, fantastic. He's cracking up. He's losing it. The pressure's getting to him, and the whole finding out he's a different species thing isn't helping. You can't just let him have a full meltdown, though. He is your ticket out of this frozen hellhole, after all. And so, by the time he pops back up out of the steaming water, a faintly pink glow to his pale skin, you decide to try to delicately steer him in a more stable direction. Apparently, though, it isn't necessary, because the smug, king of everything look is back on his face. You wish you were that good at hiding your feelings.
No matter. I am above all else adaptable. These primitive sensations are a minor distraction at most.
Yeah, okay, buddy. Like, you didn't just look like you were about to take a bite out of my neck like some kind of bad Twilight reboot. Maybe the earlier observation about him having a kind of vampire-esque flair was a little too spot on. Freaking space giants and their creepy-ass red eyes talking about biting people. Ugh.
Get out. We need to prepare.
This guy's gonna give you whiplash. Prepare?
Yes.
Loki glides over to the edge and hoists himself out of the water with no warning, splashing you and giving you a good view of his back. Yeah, his back. That's definitely all you saw. You sink up to your nose in the water. Can today get any worse? And your tree sap hangover headache is still lingering too.
I need to ensure that you're well charmed before we leave Utgard.
He says from somewhere behind you.
We will be making few stops along the way, and I'd rather ensure that you aren't simply a frozen corpse by the time we arrive in Angrboða.
How long will it take? The trip, I mean. How long will we be on the road?
According to Skadi, it should only take 4 days. Give or take, depending on the conditions.
4 days? You risk a peek over your shoulder. Luckily, he's got his pants on already. I can't... I mean, I don't think I could survive 4 hours out there, much less 4 days. Crouching by the poolside, Loki pats you lightly on the head, smiling like he didn't just almost have a major identity crisis in the middle of bath time.
Not to worry, pet. I shall keep you warm.
He rises and makes his way to the door, and you turn to watch him.
I will be outside the door. You have 5 minutes.
That isn't much time at all, and as soon as the door shuts behind him, you scramble from the pool, heart pounding in your frantic race against the clock. The coronation was surprisingly low-key. Maybe it's because all of the frost giants are kind of unenthused about their unexpected new king. Maybe they're hoping that the monster wolf is going to eat him, and you, and that they can just resume with their normal routines next week. That's not to say it isn't grand, or stressful, but at this point, maybe you're just too tired to really take it all in. Griep and Gjalep are both glued to your sides, because your usual pet bed arrangement isn't there. Apparently, the whole ordeal involves a lot of alternating standing and kneeling, and Gjalp's hand on your shoulder lets you follow along with the whole thing without really understanding any of it. Because whatever language is being spoken now isn't one that you can understand. All you know is that there's a good bit of rhyming going on, and people talking in booming, rhythmic voices. You kind of feel like you're watching a bizarre interpretation of Shakespeare. The royal family stands at the foot of the dais with the Valva and Storm Twins, and a large throne and 2 smaller ones beside it are conspicuously empty. Jeez, sucks for Helblindi, coming home and finding out that his seat's being taken. And then, you remember that Helblindi is supposedly hunting in the south, which means you're apparently going to be heading straight towards him. Him and a monstrous, giant-eating wolf. It becomes very difficult to pay attention to anything after that. Your odds of survival seem like they're dipping once again. Farbauti herself eventually puts the crown on Loki's head. It must be ceremonial or something, because you haven't seen it before, and it looks like it's made of stripes of ice and gold. They really seem to like their line work, you muse, glancing at the carved walls. Must be because of their skin. You also decide that the crown is surely made of some kind of glass or crystal. Even frost giants wouldn't actually wear a crown of ice, would they? The queen says something, and everyone falls to their knees, and you get dragged along with them. Loki turns and stalks up the first few steps, a new fur-trimmed red cloak billowing behind him. He does look pretty impressive, you have to admit. Very regal. It's honestly kind of doing things for you, you're embarrassed to note, and you're pretty glad that he's a good distance away. But Gjalep does give you a strange look, and you just wish that you can melt through the floor. And then tables, cushions, and food are brought into the room after a few more impassioned, but completely incomprehensible words by Heiðr, and Gjalep steers you from the room, her sister following close behind.
The king wishes for us to feed you well away from the others in Anga. The royal caravan will depart once the feasting is done, and you are to be safely packed away in our sleigh to await his majesty's convenience.
Oh, am I? You think snidely, though you keep your mouth shut. Loki hadn't really bothered to tell you much of anything about this stupid trip, other than demanding that you put on a few extra underlayers. You kind of feel like a marshmallow, bundled up in fabrics and furs. At least that's a positive, you guess. Even if you do slip in the icy halls and fall flat on your ass, you'll be well cushioned. The twins lead you back to the little side chamber where they had taken you before, and the fire is already roaring along in the hearth. All of the food on the table is familiar. Well, familiar for Jotunheim cuisine, that is. Loki must be trying not to get too experimental with your tolerance for foreign foods right before he drags you out into the wilderness. How considerate. You decide to be daring and actually sit at the table like a normal human being this time, and though Gjalep and Griep share a slightly bemused glance that doesn't go unnoticed, they don't say anything. Instead, they just sit down beside you and start eating with a ferocity that's honestly a little impressive. Gjalep slurps down a bowl of broth, wiping her mouth on her forearm, and Griep appears slightly exasperated.
I do hope you remember not to demonstrate such an atrocious lack of manners in front of mother and father.
I am more of a lady than you, sister, when the situation calls for it.
Scoffing, Griep turns to you.
Are you recovered from the night, mortal?
You stare at her for a second, spoon frozen in your hand, totally mortified. You hoped that the stares and smirks from some of the giants in the throne room was the only reference to the previous night's transgressions that you'd have to endure. Apparently not.
I mean your intoxication, and falling asleep in the lap of Ili.
Her look is one of wide-eyed curiosity, like she genuinely believes you didn't understand the question, and not that you're just too horrifically embarrassed to answer. You shove a spoonful of tuber soup in your mouth to give you a second or two to stall, but now both of them are watching you. I can't catch a break.
The king did not punish you too harshly, did he?
Griep asks. What an awkward question. Are you supposed to say that he did, or that he didn't? Apparently it's something he's expected to do, and it's not like he hasn't threatened it before. And as far as they know, that bruise on your arm was entirely intentional on Loki's part. Maybe you should be vague. Nothing too bad, you mumble. The twins exchange a look, but they don't ask you anything else as you finish your soup, and before you know it, it's time to pack up on your sleigh and ride off into the snowstorm. You really hope that Loki's charm continues to hold. When the twins mentioned a sleigh, you weren't entirely prepared for this thing. For one thing, it's so massive that it almost reminds you of a train car, and for another, it's entirely enclosed. More pressing than its sheer size, however, is the fact that the thing appears to be pulled by two terrifyingly large, white-furred, woolly rhinos. You freeze just inside the entrance to the courtyard where the sleigh is parked, your knees shaking. Is that... You begin, but you falter as the twins both turn to stare at you. Are those rhinoceroses? You can tell from the expression on their faces that they have no clue what you're talking about, and Griep steps up to pat one of the beasts on its flank. It kneads its feet against the ground like an excited cat, and you notice that the thing has claws. Big ones. Oh god, so not a rhino then.
This is Hornburi, and beside him you see his brother Vamuli. I have reared them since they were small. They are very loyal.
The thing makes a loud, bellowing sound, and you jump, fighting the urge to go flying back into the palace to look for Loki. You're pretty sure he won't let some freakish, prehistoric rhino-tiger hybrid eat you, and right now, that's kind of the reassurance you need.
There is no need to be frightened in Anga.
Gjalep is quick to reassure you, steering you towards the door of the sleigh carriage.
Poor little thing. I told you he should keep her in the palace, sister.
Without the king here to keep her alive, how long could she survive the court?
Please stop talking over my head, especially about me dying. Not really helping.
We could stay behind.
Lady Skadi would never permit it. Get her inside. I can hear stirrings. The feast is likely ending, and the king does not want her out in the chaos of the leave-taking.
You have to be practically hoisted up to reach the top step of the sleigh, and you don't make a very graceful landing. Everything is made of dark wood on the inside, though it's filled with mats and cushions. In fact, even the inner walls are covered with thickly woven swaths of fabric. There were a few windows, but they have the same bubbly, thick glass as some of the ones in the palace. So, other than letting in some light, you can't imagine that they're very useful. Gjalep clambers in after you.
This is very exciting. I have never traveled in such a large convoy before, and we have never had an entire sleigh to ourselves.
You find a nice little nook in between some boxes and baskets that presumably hold some sort of supplies, and once you've snuggled in, she drops a massive duvet-like blanket on your lap. No one else is riding in here?
No one else. Unless one of the riders tires of the elements and decides to shelter with us. If we do not reach a resting post before the party decides to halt for the night, we may have company, but I am hopeful that we will not be disturbed.
Griep calls from the door. The doorway is fairly wide, and over her shoulder, you see several giants start to trickle into the courtyard, carrying bags and shields and all sorts of other interesting-looking things. You're so distracted staring behind her that you almost miss the flash of bright white fur that appears by her knees.
My! Wherever did you come from?
Gjalep moves forward for a better view, but you stay firmly where you are. No more freaky alien creatures for me, thank you.
What is it, sister?
A Melraki.
She stoops down and hefts the thing in her arms, and it makes an obscenely loud purring sound. You're almost shocked by how familiar it looks. It looks like a fox. A worryingly large, fluffy, suspiciously feline-looking fox. But still, the thing is definitely some kind of fox.
Oh, where is your collar,
Griep coos, and the fox, Melraki, or whatever it is, purrs again, its narrow, shiny black eyes giving off a look of supreme satisfaction.
Do you suppose he is feral?
He does not seem feral. In any case, they are said to be auspicious. I say we bring him along.
Oh, hell no, you think. Like, sure, he's cute and all, but this isn't some little earthly Arctic fox. The thing's the size of a sturdy wolf, and you can see its sharp little teeth as it yawns. But it looks like you're overruled, because Gjalep claps her hands in excitement and hefts the giant furball into the sleigh, and Griep climbs in after her, pulling the door closed. The twins both settle cross-legged on the floor near you, and you keep a wary eye on the toothy interloper that almost seems to be grinning at you.
What shall we call him?
Gjalep asks, scratching the Melraki behind one of its large ears.
Vataski.
Griep declares. Yeah, no. You decide. The thing's a snowball if you've ever seen one. How about Snowball? They both look amused at that.
It is a very strange name in Anga. A strange name for strange times.
The creature pads over and climbs into her lap, curling up with its tail under its chin.
I like it. Snowball he shall be.
You can't help but laugh a bit at that. She says it like it's some sort of grand exotic title. It's a fairly common name for pets where I'm from. It's good that you have something to talk about to distract you, because there's a lot of noise outside the sleigh now, and it's making you tense. Part of you almost wishes Loki would just sling you over his shoulder again. At least you know he's capable of magicking up miracle cures when you're about to die of hypothermia. Griep seems incredibly taken with her new pet, which almost seems to be on the verge of falling asleep in her lap.
Mortals have pets?
She says, slightly surprised. You blink. Of course. I mean, humans are at the top of the food chain on Earth, you know. On Midgard, I mean. We have all kinds of pets.
I should like to visit Midgard someday. Father says that there are many interesting plants that grow on Midgard, and that even the winters are mild.
Gjalep declares. She's kneeling by one of the trunks now, digging around for something. He's been before?
Yes, many Jotnar have been there, though we have never had the opportunity, as we were born after Odin's war.
Gjalep pulls a heavy-looking tome out of the trunk and places it in your lap.
Prince Bylester thought that this might entertain you for a while, mortal. There are pictures, even if you cannot read it.
That's interesting. What's it about? You ask, flipping open the cover. The pictures are brightly colored and gilded, and the first page shows a massive tree.
It is an account of the 9 realms, and its peoples.
She replies, glancing over the page. You flip to the next one, and there's a portrait of a young, white-haired giant with a smirk on his face. His eyes are green. Who's this?
I am not certain.
She plucks the book from your hands and holds it up so that her sister can see, and you watch Griep quickly scan over the page.
It is the Witch King Havarungur of the Stormer Jotnar. He wrote it in ancient days. It is said that he traveled all the worlds in the days when Bor, son of Buri, ruled the realm eternal. He was an Aesir friend and elf friend alike.
She says, wrinkling her nose slightly. From the tone of her voice, he isn't a very well thought of historical figure on Jotunheim, but that does sound like a pretty impressive resume. He has green eyes.
The mark of a sorcerer and a shapeshifter. The Stormer Jotnar are rife with them, and always have been.
There's a little bit of awe in her tone, mixed with the disapproval. The fox on her lap makes an irritated little yelp, and she continues petting him. What an intention hog, you think.
Mother says that they mixed with the Vanir in the old days. But I have also heard it said that they have Yosofar blood.
You aren't entirely sure what all of that means, but it's certainly not a good thing. Yosofar?
The light elves of Alfheim. They are known for their skin changing.
Skin changing makes it sound even creepier, you decide. And he's dead now, I'm guessing?
Killed in battle. They say he went mad.
Gjalep places the book back in your hands, and you smooth your finger over the runes at the bottom of the page, wishing you could read them. The Witch King on the page Well, you can't deny that he looks a lot like your own favorite blue sorcerer. It's something in his eyes, like he knows some big secret joke. Maybe you can ask one of the Storm Twins more about him. Griep and Gjalep seem to think of magic users in general as pretty scandalous, and you doubt they would know much beyond the fact that the guy went crazy and had to be killed. There's more bellowing outside only a few minutes later, and you can only assume that more of the rhino things are being brought in to load up for the trip. Nerves on edge, you flip to another page, wishing that Loki would make an appearance. He promised he'd keep you safe. Someone knocks sharply on the door, and then it opens to reveal a pointy-eared giant wearing a surprising amount of layers. You guess no one wants to be completely miserable for a road trip that might last almost a week.
We are ready, my ladies. We will be near the head of the convoy. Is there anything you require?
No. We are ready to depart.
He closes the door firmly, and you try to ignore the rapid pounding of your heart as the sleigh lurches into motion. You aren't sure how long it's been, though it's been dark outside for quite some time now. The sun fully set, and only a bit of moonlight making it through the whirling snow and through the thick windows of the sleigh. One of the benefits of being relatively tiny, you decided, is that you can move about pretty easily inside the sleigh, while the twins have to duck their heads any time they want to stand. You've gotten pretty restless. Griep has been asleep for a while, with the purring snowball curled up in her lap. You're still getting a kick out of that name, and Gjalep is reading something by the lamplight. You're tempted to try asking her a bunch of questions, but things are kind of weird, and you aren't really sure how chatty you can get before they decide that you aren't being very pet-like and get annoyed. But you have decided that Gjalep seems to be the more sentimental, excitable of the two of them, so maybe you can get her to share some interesting gossip. You are supposed to be Loki's spy, after all. And then, you remember the whole Loka Kona thing, and you grimace. I'm not his woman, you think, pulling your quilt tighter around your shoulders as you try to make out what lies beyond the window at the front of the sleigh. I'm not his anything. Unfortunately, with nothing to distract you, your mind begins to wander, and where it decides to wander is right back to the steam pool where Loki looked at you like he wanted to devour you. Ugh. Just kill me now. Heat burns through you, and you peek over your shoulder to make sure Gjalep isn't giving you any knowing looks. You're relieved to see that she still has her eyes glued to her book. For a minute, you almost consider asking her about the scent thing, because human senses definitely aren't that advanced, but you're too afraid that she'd figure out why you're asking. But you can't blot out the phantom sensation of his thumb stroking the soft skin of your side, or the way his dark hair clung to his neck from the steam of the bath, or the rasp in his deep voice. Oh my god, get a hold of yourself, lady! Hey, when do you think we'll stop and eat or take a break? You ask. Hopefully you sound casual. You really don't want anyone to figure out that you're really just wanting to see Loki.
I doubt very much that we will stop for hours yet in Anga. It is best if we travel as far as possible while the weather allows. There is food here if you are hungry. I would also suggest that you sleep if you are tired. It will be a long night.
Oh, okay. You return to your spot and curl up with the book again, hoping that maybe you can at least let the whir of the wind outside lull you to sleep.
Sire!
Griep's startled, sleepy voice wakes you suddenly, and you open your eyes to find Loki perched in the open doorway, his cloak whipping in the wind. Snow filters into the sleigh, and you realize that it's still speeding along. You just stare at him. How? Did he just leap onto the side of a moving sleigh? Loki slips inside and pulls the door closed behind him, dusting snow from his clothing.
I tire of the wind,
he announces, his lips turned in an imperious frown. The twins exchange a look, but he ignores them, carefully selecting a large cushion in the front of the sleigh, upon which he promptly sprawls. Once he's settled in, he raises his hand, pointing one long finger at the fox creature in Griep's lap.
What is this?
Its long tongue lolls as it appears to grin at him, and you notice that Griep leans forward, slightly protective.
This is a Malraki, sire. We found him in the courtyard, and
And naturally, you decided he should be brought along on this expedition.
Gjalep clears her throat awkwardly. At least you aren't the only one he intimidates.
They are good omens. And he is clearly domesticated.
The Malraki ducks its furry head under its tail as Loki continues to glower at it, and then he suddenly breaks into a smirk.
Auspicious indeed. Now, come here, mortal.
You stare at him. Is he really going to make you come cuddle with him? In front of the twins? Apparently so, since he crooks his finger at you, his eyes dark in the dim light. Full of apprehension, you flounder your way to your feet and shuffle to his side. Oh my god, what is the matter with you, Loki? You shriek internally. Can you not see how horrifically awkward this is for everyone? Loki spreads his legs slightly as he settles back against the cushions, and your face feels like it's catching fire.
Sit, pet.
You try to gingerly perch on his knee, despite the sleigh jostling along, but Loki is quick to wrap his arms around you and drag you back against him as he lounges. Body stiff, you do your very best to not melt when you feel his breath against your ear.
After last night, you can hardly pretend to be bashful, can you?
Closing your eyes, you try to force your muscles to relax. It's not like you can just throw a fit in front of the twins, because knowing Loki, he'd probably lose his mind and actually punish you for it. And even if Griep and Gjalep were weirded out by their new king popping in for a surprise sleepover, they're both too afraid of him to actually say anything about it.
Your king is going to sleep. I suggest you do the same.
Loki tucks the quilt around you both, as if he hasn't a care in the world. You wake up sometime later, not even realizing that you had fallen asleep. The inside of the sleigh is dark, only one hanging lantern left swaying at the other end. Gjalep is slumped over with her book in her lap, and Griep is curled up on a cushion not too far from her, in the aptly named Snowball nestled against her side. And Loki, well, you don't know how you managed it, but you must have rolled over to get more comfortable at some point, because you're lying on top of him now, chest to chest, your head tucked under his chin. His breathing is so steady, peaceful even. Loki isn't someone you typically describe as peaceful. He makes a sleepy humming sound, and you cringe as you realize that your stirring must have woken him. Or maybe it didn't, because instead of the half-awake grumbling you anticipated, you feel one of his large hands rub a few light circles on the small of your back, almost like he's trying to soothe you back to sleep. You aren't really sure what to make of that, but it does feel nice, and you don't have much time to fret over it all before you slip back into your dreams. That fox thing is right in your face when you wake up again, peering down at you with a toothy grin. Your heart nearly stops, and you're pretty sure it's laughing at you. Griep's face appears above it only a moment later, blinking sleepily.
We've come to a halt in Unga. There is a small lodge by the river here, and the king has called for a rest. The animals need to be fed and watered.
You sit up. Loki is nowhere to be seen. Oh, thank goodness. I really have to pee. For a so-called primitive race, the frost giants seem to hold a pretty high standard as far as the whole interior plumbing situation is concerned, so you're hoping that holds true, even for whatever medieval version of an Encino lodge you stopped at now. Can I get out? You ask.
Of course. We shall all go inside and refresh ourselves. Because we are near the head of the convoy with the royal party, we will be first.
Gjalep slings a large bag over her shoulder and opens the door, hopping out into the snow. It's daylight now, but it still looks cold as hell, and suddenly you're kind of second-guessing your eagerness to get out of the carriage.
Come, mortal! We must move quickly. I do not imagine the king will wish to stop for long.
She calls, holding out her hand. You let her help you out of the sleigh, immediately sinking into snow past your knees.
Oh, goodness! Such short little legs you have. Carry her, sister.
Oh, no, you really don't have to. Griep kneels down, apparently unbothered by the snow.
Nonsense! You will be terribly slow if you try to push through this. Come!
And so you climb onto her back, accepting the fact that you're pretty darn useless outside on this stupid planet. At least they're being nice about it, you guess. Snowball bursts out of the sleigh behind Griep and starts bouncing off through the snow with unbridled exuberance.
Wait!
She cries, but the fox thing has already disappeared into the snow-covered brush alongside the roadway, and her face falls.
Oh, I am certain he will come back. It is the nature of wild things to run, after all.
Griep agrees, but she still looks pretty crestfallen.
You are right.
While it would be probably wise to keep your head down, your curiosity gets the better of you, and you peer around from your vantage point. Once Griep rounds to the other side of the sleigh, you spy the so-called small lodge, and surprise, surprise, it really isn't that small. I guess everything's bigger on Jotunheim. The lodge is round, with a large domed roof, and save for the doorways, the entire stone structure is covered with a thick layer of ice. Oh, cool. Like a crazy giant igloo. There are a lot of frost giants milling about outside, some that you recognize from the palace, and some that you've never seen before. One particular cluster seems to have caught notice of you, and from the way they're staring, you guess that they didn't get the memo about Loki's mortal.
From Midgardi.
You hear one of the men say as Griep and Gjalep pass by them. Hey, Midgard. I know what that means. Then you realize that they're probably saying something pretty unsavory about you, and some of your excitement fades. Once you enter the lodge, you find that almost the entire structure is made up of one large open room. There's a huge fire burning in the center, and stone tables and benches are all set up around it. In some ways, it almost reminds you of a cafeteria, or like a really sparsely decorated event center. Heiðr and Hrossþjófr are already seated at a table, and they wave you over. Gjalep settles you carefully onto one of the benches, and you try to ignore the fact that a ton of giants are watching you with apparent consternation. Well, it seems like humans at the dinner table must be a pretty big faux pas.
How fares our mortal? It seems you've survived the night in one piece.
Hrossþjófr asks, crossing his arms against his chest.
Of course she did. Fate wills it so.
His sister says, and then she smiles at you, eyes sparkling.
And so does Loki Laufeyson.
You aren't entirely sure why, but that made you blush. They must have been traveling with him at the front of the caravan. Do they know that he snuck away during the night to snuggle up with you, like some sort of fickle, bad-tempered cat? It's a possibility. Yeah, I don't think fate likes me all that much. You say softly, surreptitiously searching the room for Loki. Where is he? You actually kind of hoped you'd get to be with him for a little while, considering he's, well, you aren't sure what he is anymore. Not a friend, of course, but something.
Nonsense! Fate shines on you in Unga. You have a place and a purpose. What more could a mortal desire?
Oh boy, there is so much I could say to that. Hrossþjófr beams at her, teeth bright.
And you, Igudja, are you enjoying the journey?
Call me that again, Seder Harandi, and I will string you up by your ears once we reach my father's forest.
I only wish you would dare attempt it.
Is she blushing again? She definitely looks like she's blushing again.
Come, mortal. Let us go bathe and change, and then we will eat.
Griep says briskly, taking the bag from her sister. It's kind of nice to have someone else's drama to mull over as she steers you through the crowded room, because it lets you pretend that you don't have your own issues to deal with right now. Once you're alone with her in one of the bathing rooms, you figured it's safe to speak. What's Angrboða mean?
It is what they used to refer to the giantesses from the forest. It implies that we are troll-like.
Of course, trolls are a real thing. You take a breath. And Heiðr Handi?
Heiðr Bearer, a wizard.
Griep says, rummaging in the bag and pulling out a bundle of assorted fabrics. Oh, like Loki... like the king? She gives you a strange look, like she can't believe you almost said his name.
Yes. Like the king.
And that's an insult?
For most of us, yes.
You'll have to remember to listen out for that one. The bathing room you're in now pales in comparison to the one in the palace. Instead of a fancy pool, there are several long trough-like sinks along the wall, flowing with water that, fortunately, appears to be steaming.
Go relieve yourself. That room there.
She points to a door near the back, and you bolt for it. Don't mind if I do. You've always hated that about road trips. The bathroom situation can be pretty sketchy. When you come back, she's stripped off already and is scrubbing herself down with a sponge. Oh, great. More naked giants.
Quickly, Inanga. Come and bathe. We are not in the palace, and the water will not stay this scalding for long.
Scalding water is too tempting to resist. Okay, so this is happening. At least you aren't having to take another bath with Loki, so that's good. Whatever charm he put on you was impressive, but you can't feel like you're gonna freeze your butt off when you start washing off. And so you speed through and put on your new clothes in under 5 minutes. Good enough. Who cares if I smell a little funky? They're the ones dragging me across the wilderness, so they can deal with it. Loki was sitting with his brother when Griep finally brings you back through the lodge common room. And other than a hint of that blade-thin little smile of his, he doesn't seem to take any real notice to you. Whatever. At least that means less attention will be on me. Maybe. A bowl is placed in front of you at the table. Loki approved, you assume, and you're honestly pretty hungry, so you try to dig in. It's shredded meat of some kind, and more of the suspicious green biscuits. I just want a salad. A nice salad with some fresh fruit, and maybe even a soda. Both sets of twins are teasing at each other, and you honestly aren't really following most of it. Teenage giant insults must be in their own class, you guess. Storm twins are definitely a lot less dignified when they aren't standing up in front of everyone making speeches. But then, Heiðr looks up at something behind you, and you can see the playfulness smooth from her features.
Prince Bylester, how may we serve you?
I am starved for entertaining conversation. I wish to join you.
Of course, sire. We would be honored.
You don't turn around. You don't have to, because you can just feel his stare. Gjalep is beaming, and her sister looks slightly tense.
Good.
Bylester replies, and you do your best to keep your eyes fixed on your lunch as he slides into the space beside you. When you do risk a glance towards the fire, you notice that the king's red eyes are staring right at you.